this computer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Delineation. I have world famous astrologer S.J. Anderson with me today, here to talk about the monies. There's a lot to go into this conversation, and I kind of just want to open it up with, for me personally, I've been, and I think you'd probably understand and probably agree, because of Pluto and Aquarius and everything that's going on, your first initial reaction is this: oh, a technology bad, caveman mentality. We should just go back to the gold standard, and that sort of a thing. And something I've been sitting with lately is we are alive with the triplicity shift into Aquarius. There is no going back. There is no, oh, if we just practice free market capitalism and maybe Austrian economics, everything would be fine. It's we are alive for the shift, and the shift occurred. We have to live through a new period of currency. It is what must happen. And I open up with that because that mindset to me has made me the most curious about this and has made me less fearful of a CBDC. Like, yes, is it bad? Yes, it's got bad things to it. But I watched your video on this. It was the perfect YouTube video. It was like fucking 4 minutes where you were like, hey, Uranus and Gemini, money, this example, this example, this example, fuck off. And it was super good.
Yeah.
And that just left me wanting to know more. So SJ, I'm just gonna assume everyone knows you, but let's just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself real quick. Do a quick plug.
Sure. I mean, S.J. Anderson, I'm an astrologer. I'm a Texan, and I am on YouTube. I love astrology. It's my life. I'm deep down the rabbit hole. I read for clients all day, all week, and I make YouTube and talk to cool astrologers like Cam. And, part of our job is to think about time, think about the moment we're in, think about the facts of reality as they're unfolding, and try to, create meaning and share that meaning, using this movement of the heavens as a kind of grounding for our meaning creation. And, this field of mundane astrology that I've been working in, that's what we do. We look at larger cycles. We look at policy. We look at moves in history and emergences around things like technology or the rise and fall of industry and nation states and wars. I mean, and economics. All of this stuff is a field of astrology called mundane astrology. And I guess I would just say my work on it has been more cycle work. I like to think about planets through signs and just looking at cycles, because it's, I think, an underrated predictive technique. I mean, yes, we have these ancient techniques that are highly technical, and you look at this chart at this time and certain aspects and things. But to me, the most powerful mundane technique, or one of them, is get a planetary point. Often slower moving points are better because they can time cycles that are longer in time. But you pick a planetary point and you just look at its cycle and then read the news and what emerged in the past. And often, more often than not, it's quite accurate. And when you start picking patterns, then we have a sense of what may be coming. So
AI has made that so much easier. I use ChatGPT now for all my research. It's saving me hours rather than scrolling what happened in March in France in 1638 on Wikipedia.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Yep.
for those that haven't watched the video, I'll make sure I link in this description. But the video I'm referencing is your Uranus and Gemini and currency change. Can you just quickly go over what that video is, really, really quick?
Absolutely. So I think I opened that video. When I think about a planet and a sign, I like to just say, what does the planet mean? What does the sign mean? And so we know Uranus, it's got, every planetary point has many significations, but Uranus can be innovation. It's a keyword, breakthrough. Prometheus giving fire to man, right? It's this idea of some kind of breakthrough, tech oriented. And this isn't me. This is basic 101 astrology. Okay. And I like to work with 101, by the way, Cam. It's just that's all you need to have a robust and profound astrology.
Side tangent. This is why I love the circle jerk on astrology Twitter. Of like, look at me, I'm using star parabens with this weird, I'm loosening the bonds of the lot of wheat to the lot of cows. It's like, dude, you can get everything done with like 4 or 5 techniques.
And we studied this stuff, right? When you're a new astrologer and you love the craft and you're studying, of course we learn it all. But my practice has gotten more simple, and it's gotten simpler as I've gotten deeper into it. Now I'll use advanced techniques when I need to, but basically I'm more interested in where is Saturn in your chart right now. Actually, that's how I like to open a lot of readings, because that tells me more than anything else, And yeah, we're on a little tangent now, but I think it would be good for some of the astrologers in the audience. Maybe they're finding this too, because I find this is a truth, and people will discover this eventually, that one Saturn, like, let's just go for an example. Which Trump, a Leo rising? Is that true? he
What?
has Saturn where in his eighth house right now.
Yeah,
So on all those
other
lawsuits,
people's
right?
assets. Well, it's more so I find it interesting that we're kind of finding out he never owned the buildings and that they registered his name, and Saturn is like in this eighth house of other people's assets, other people's
Yep,
property.
yep.
Yeah,
Huge money
that's
judgment against him.
mhm.
How was it?
It
$500 million
was the
money
biggest one.
judgment.
I think it was the biggest one in the world. Even
Yep.
though all of his banks were like, this is fine. The judge was like, 350 is what you pay.
But you see how simple that like you don't need anything but where's Saturn, what whole sign house it in it is, and it's exactly describing reality. So that's like so powerful. So and then let me just come back if I can. So it's the same idea here. Uranus is Prometheus and tech innovation. What is Gemini? Any sign. What I like to do is what I call the whole sign rulers. And it's simply the triplicity lords. I like to use the two. This is after Paulus Alexandrinus, by the way. When you go to his text, he says when he describes the signs of the zodiac, he uses these what I call the whole sign rulers:
Are
exaltation,
you saying
domicile. Yeah,
Paul of
go ahead.
Alexandria?
Yeah, Paul of Alexandria or Paulus
Okay.
Alexandrinus is the other name you
I
see.
say it the white way, I guess.
Okay, okay. It would fit Mr. White. But he's so it's I found this to be a powerful way to examine the what a sign is, what it means. So with Gemini, the idea would be you get Mercury and which is banks and money. I mean, just pull up any ancient text. Mercury is the coinage, the changing of money, the buying and selling. So it's money. So Gemini is money, basically. And then Saturn, of course, is the day triplicity lord of Gemini. You're going to have some element of technology that comes through both Saturn, both Aquarius and Gemini, because and this is some other videos, it's not in this video, but I've basically come to understand or propagate the idea that technology is both Mercury and Saturn,
Yes.
because it's the long-term changes of a society. That's what we define as technology. Technology is not me making some little thing that no one ever sees here in my apartment. That's nothing. That's meaningless. Technology is like the iPhone that revolutionizes the world and then stays forever until new technology replaces it. So you need Saturn and Mercury. And the two signs of the zodiac that only have Saturn and Mercury as whole sign rulers are Aquarius and Gemini. Now, Aquarius is more Saturnine because Saturn has a larger percentage if you're going to do some formulas to determine like what planet rules it the most. Saturn, of course, rules by domicile. And then Mercury's more, Gemini part of me is more mercurial. Mercury rules by domicile, but it's still both Saturn and Mercury. So that's why I think Mercury is these banking structure. As we get into it later, we see that when Uranus is coming to Gemini, yes, it's altered the banking, the Mercury, but also the longer term structure, which is the Saturnine component to Gemini. And by the way, just to complete this circle, Libra has Venus, so it changes that game.
Mhm.
Even though Libra has some of this, but now you're talking about relationships, and it's a little bit more complicated when you throw Venus into the mix. So anyhow, great way to examine the signs of the zodiac.
Well, and
And
I want to say real quick, I think my audience would appreciate uh describing why Mercury rules over money and not Venus, not Taurus. And I
yeah,
get that all
yeah,
the time. And I mean,
yeah,
I'll just have you explain that.
yeah. I mean, I think there is what I would say, and I used to be more hardcore, like it's not Venus, and I've kind of softened on that a little bit just because Venus is pleasure and it's adornment and it's nice things. Venus is like the watch you're wearing and how much money it costs, right? You need money to buy things. So there is a monetary component to the Venusian, in my opinion, because pleasure often costs money. And refinement, especially those higher levels of refinement with the Venusian, is going to cost a lot of money. Art's billions of dollars, right? You money launder through art. But to me, money is a
Like
trickster.
currency,
Money's a
exact,
trick.
like
Yeah. It,
currency specifically.
it's a trick, right? It's the trick of
Well, like
the lie.
fractional
Yeah.
reserve banking and the fiat currency, and
Yeah.
it's all like, again, a trick, and it's just kind of an
Yeah.
idea. It's a number. What is that? Wolf of Wall Street. It's a Lala. It's a Lulu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
The Matthew
yeah.
McConaughey thing. But Mercury is
The
about the go ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead,
Well,
Matt.
I said the only thing I want to say is my only thing with Venus is I always look at Venus as like value. Like I'm still going to attach things like
Yes.
gold as like Venus, where it could be a store of value, or and sometimes I get a little confused where I'm like, is the stock market or like even property or like assets going to be more Jupiter or Saturn in nature? But I just think people get so worked up about like Venus is money because money good and green, right? And it's I just don't think that's the case. And I think astrology, especially transiting astrology and stock market and stuff like that, becomes so much easier when it's fucking Mercury. It's a Mercury game.
Yeah, Mercury game. And just to say, like, I've learned also that most things are signified by a few different symbols within our system. So I've become less hardcore. Like, it's only this, they do this with sex a lot. It's only Venus. And it's like, okay, let's wake up, or it's only the fifth house. And it's like, okay, let's just soften here. It can come into some other houses. There's some other planets that relate to it for sure. And so I'm kind of less of a dogmatist around like what signifies what. But with money, I think that, oh, sorry, it's the earth element is what I would kind of bring in also. With there's some money stuff there because it's the material form, the
Mm-hmm.
materiality, and money does relate to the objects around us. I mean, they are certainly valuable. Like, I could go trade in my room here. I've got things I could go trade for money. Just to come up to this watch, I could go trade it for some money. And so there's a Venusian side there. Jewelry is worth money, so you can trade that. But when you're talking about the technology of value exchange as a like way to upgrade society, you're talking about like I think Mercury, because Mercury is about form changing. It's about how things shape shift. And so when you look at the history of money, you had different coins. They used to shave the coins off to
Yeah.
the people that held them, to cheat people, right? So cheating is Mercury. That comes in with money and the money system and currency. It's all, cheating is a necessary part of currency. You never get out of that question. Is it fake or is it real? That's why you have people even here when I use cash, they'll check always, like, make sure it's a fake, it's a real bill.
Well, I think this is
So
important to talk about because we're talking about currency in this episode. We're not like, for example, I have an iPhone, and when things change, the value of this, unless Taiwan gets invaded, then the value of this is skyrocketing. But
yeah,
the value of this isn't changing the currency, and so maybe this is 1,000 USD, but maybe it's like let's say like what is it in Japan? It's like or in Puerto Rico, everything's like 12 billion Zimbabwe dollars. Like it's this huge number, and I think that's the important thing to understand about this episode for people that are listening is that like what we're talking about is the currency and the way that we exchange value in goods and the way that we measure that, and not necessarily the what the inherent value of something is, but the way that we price it at or the system in which we exchange that value.
yeah, absolutely. How is value stored and exchanged? Exactly. That's what currency is. Because when you go back to the history of, for example, coinage, and this is a little tangent, but I think your audience will find it interesting. The coinage is invented the last time, and this, of course, is so far back that do we really know, right? History
Mm-hmm.
can get hazy the farther back you go. But according to Wikipedia and the sources it cites, it's around the time of the last Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries. So in early Aries. So I think it
The
was four or
last
five
one,
degrees. The last one that was in this decan that was as close as we are to the one
that
we're about
I
to
thought that was in
have
like
was
1650 something because I did a bunch of
no,
research on this on my
I
Saturn and
did,
Neptune episode too.
I could
Or
get
was
it all
that in
back up.
this?
No,
I think that was the second decan.
that's later. Yeah. When you try to, which ones are close to zero, there's two that are interesting. One in about 500 BC when coinage is invented. And I think it's 4 or 5 degrees, and maybe even two or three or four. And then, of course, the last one in the first degree of the zodiac, which is like 500 BC, which is timed with the rise of Proto-Indo-European language. And so, but I come back to this idea of the Neptune Saturn. I know we're talking about different things, but it kind of relates to Saturn as a ruler of Gemini. When you have these deeper structures that get refreshed with that Aries initial refreshment. But just sorry, that's a little bit of a tangent. People can go watch a video I did on World Astrology Report, Dan Waits' channel. We did a whole video on Neptune Saturn. By the way, that got marked by YouTube as age restricted
Really?
because, yeah, because we go into Russia and Ukraine and that's a whole separate conversation. But
I've never been age restricted, but I make my videos not for kids.
okay,
Do you guys make your
that
videos for kids?
I don't know. He's doing his whole thing on his channel. He
Okay.
may not have clicked the right one there, but there was a thing on YouTube where if you had war imagery at a certain point, they purged a bunch of channel videos and age restricted them. And I think he had some B-roll with like a soldier or something. It was quite minor. So maybe they did it for that, but it was a strange video because it was one that got picked up by the algorithm. It went like 10,000, 20,000 views in like a day. It just got
Wow.
And the conclusion we came, and I'll just say it quickly. I know we're on a little bit of a tangent, but if you look at when Neptune and Saturn have conjoined in Aries at all, and this is the one you're talking about. The last one was in 1701 or 2.
1708 or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, because I did a whole
So
video about it for like the last couple hundred years.
Russia won the war, so they won a
Yeah,
battle
dude,
against
dude.
Sweden.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay. Okay.
interrupting
Okay.
because
Go ahead.
why is Saturn and Neptune Russia? Why is it Russia? I can't
Yeah.
figure it out to save my life. But it's USSR fall. It's Stalin. It's the Russian Revolution. It's why is it Russia? Why? It
Well,
doesn't make sense to me.
I think it has to do with like the great unknown that Russia is like this kind of spiritual center of some kind. There was a book by Gary Lachman, the famous British occultist and writer. He has a book he published the last 3 or 4 years called Former Basis of Blondie, but it's called The Mysterious Occult Russia or something. And he traces there's something about Russia that it's like holding the collective spirit of some part of the spiritual humanity of our great spiritual oneness of the collective of humanity. Russia has a strong kind of part of that, and so he'll trace people like, I don't know, like the cosmology in Russia. We don't get a lot of it in the West. A lot of this stuff doesn't filter into the Western mind, but the idea of the Orthodox religion is centered there. I know Greek, it's also centered in Greece, but they're kind of a container of one, maybe part of the human mix of the spirit that maybe is Neptune in a way. I think about the landscape. You start going north into the Siberia, what is it, the tundra. I mean, that's kind of strange. I mean, I was in Belarus and I studied yoga in Belarus for a while, and I got my certification there to be a teacher, but with Russians. And they were telling me about, they're very wild, like in terms of how they think about the world, very naturalistic. But read about Rasputin.
Oh,
And
dude, yes, I've been recently getting into Rasputin and how he was just this witchcraft wizard having orgies and telling the king, like, do this, and people listen to him.
but the history of Rasputin, so that was his like final dark form. But when he came up, he came up in these Russian spiritual communities that are orgiastic. People will go out into the wilderness for like and have pilgrimages in nature and like do orgies. And so it's not just Rasputin, it's part of some kind of Russian nature. And I'm very much not an expert in this, but I've studied enough to kind of throw these ideas in. People can go research more, but I think that's the Neptunian side of the spiritual that you find in Russia. And Saturn is cold, right? It's cold up there.
I
So
always thought
that's
of the
what I
Iron
think.
Curtain with Saturn Neptune.
Yeah.
And
Well,
go ahead.
I just want to trace in a second. Just let me. I kind of want to go through a few of these dates real quick, just to finish this, just to do it for the audience, and
Yeah.
then we can. But go ahead first if you want to.
No, I just look at, like, I think of the Iron Curtain with Saturn Neptune as like this idea of, like, behind the Eastern Bloc, like, you don't see, you don't know type of a thing. And I just love the term Iron Curtain, which is just very Saturn Neptune.
Yeah, straight up, and it is this kind of unknown for us in the West. Like, there's always been this. When I went to Belarus, it was shocking. It's like, wow, this is really different. I mean, I was living in Minsk for a while, where Lee Harvey Oswald lived. That's my middle name, Oswaldo, and I was living in the building that Lee Harvey Oswald had an apartment in, and it's this really impressive building right on the river there. And I was like, some weird synchronicities were happening when I was in Minsk, but you feel how radically different is the Cyrillic script. It's cold as a core theme of that culture. Those are some of the things that come to mind for me. Let me just say, if you look at the 20th century only, of course, Saturn Neptune is what you mentioned earlier: Russian Revolution, death of
Stalin
Stalin,
and
fall of the
USSR.
Berlin Wall,
Yeah.
literal the same years,
Mhm.
exact.
Well, and
But if
Putin,
you
Putin has Saturn Neptune.
and then Putin has Saturn Neptune. I mean,
It
wow.
just
If
it's beautiful,
if
really.
you buy the chart, I know there's different charts for him, like that have different years even. So I think we might not even know what Putin's chart really is, but just to say, if you restrict it to Aries, Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, and this is what we did in the video, we're just like, and we weren't advocating any political opinion. I mean, I'm just an astrologer. I'm just saying let's map the cycles. So they win a battle in against Sweden, and then found St. Petersburg within 2 months or something of the last Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries in 1702 or whenever it is, first 10 years of the 18th century. If you go to the one before that, and I believe this is in 1530s, I'll have to get it up, but the same year, within the same month, they win a battle against the Mongols, the Battle of Kulakova, which is as important to the Russian historical unfoldment. And then Moscow basically starts beating back, and Russia's kind of founded around this as it pushes back the Mongol Empire. And so we were just like in the video. And if you go to the one before that, it's the historians say
in Aries, right?
in Aries, only in Aries we're looking at. And I think the one before that is when the term Slav they think was founded. And so there's something with Aries
Oh,
where
that's sending shivers down my spine. Saturn and Aries is Slav, which is like
that's what
well, that's the root term of slave.
slave.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's okay. That's a wild thought. That's crazy.
And so we were like, okay, there. What would it be like if it just repeats? They win a battle and something very important for their collective identity emerges in 2026. What could it be? And they were like, well, they're in a war in Ukraine now, so I know what's going to happen. I'm not trying to predict they're going to win, but we were just mentioned that. And I think
Oh,
what happened was, are you familiar with
so you can say it on my
NAFO?
show. You can say it on my show. They're gonna win.
NAFO, you know what NAFO is? NAFO, it's like the online trolls for pro-Ukraine. The NAFO bots, they were always,
Oh,
they had
I've never.
that little dog, and they're just like um, really hard to deal with, because if you say anything about Russia, you just have NAFO, and it happened on Twitter too. My first Twitter ban ever was what I think was a NAFO, probably paid, intelligence troll. And anytime I spoke anything, and it wasn't even like I want Russia to win, because I don't know. I'm just here to map as an astrologer, and they would just come in with all of this pro NATO, pro Ukraine propaganda. And I think what happened is our video took off, and they somehow pulled some strings and just cut it off because it was getting too viral. Anyhow, that's just a theory. Maybe that's not true. Maybe it was that B-roll of a tank or something. But anyhow, let me come to you there, because I'm just trying to think. I came to this because we were talking about, I forgot even
Currency.
how we got on
You
this.
said coinage. So
Coinage,
coinage
yes.
was made in
It's
Saturn and Neptune. Now,
it's
to get us back on track, some of
yeah.
the things I want to talk about is, and answer this quickly this time, because we're gonna talk a lot
Thanks.
about
Okay.
about a lot of different things. You're
Okay.
good.
Okay.
I
Thanks.
know
Thanks.
I
Thanks.
can yap too, but this is a yapping
Yeah.
friendly zone. Is
Okay.
did you go out seeking, looking for these Uranus and Gemini transits, or were you like, was this given to you? Because that's what happened to me when I
No.
got into Saturn Neptune. It was like, oh, like USSR falls. And like, oh, Stalin dies. Oh, the Russian Revolution. Oh, this, like, why is it always fucking? And then Putin has Saturn Neptune. It's just one of those things that you stumble upon. So you stumbled upon
Yeah.
this. And I asked this earlier, you didn't get to it, but that, oh no, I didn't ask
Okay.
this yet.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you stumbled upon this information, and I kind of want you real quick to tell the audience like what you stumbled upon in terms of like what you
Yeah.
just like what you said in that video of like what happened this year, what happened this year,
Yeah.
what happened this year.
You got it. And let me just go back. So let me just put my mind frame back. So I was like the first part of the video, I simply say Uranus is technological innovation, Gemini's money. Okay, so let's get
Mm-hmm.
that out of the way. And then I said, well, let's look now at the history of when Uranus has been in Gemini. And this is my favorite way to do mundane research. You get the dates on your computer, you do it in SolarFire, you list the dates on a Word document, and then you just go to the internet. And I did use ChatGTP. It was hallucinating, so I checked everything with other research, but I did type it in. I said, ChatGTP, what happened in these dates with money? Because the reason why I started asking it about money was that I knew I just went back with a few cycles in my mind. So the last Uranus and Gemini was during the Civil War, but I knew about the greenback and the Lincoln controversy. That's famous in the kind of circles I've come up in. If you're reading about JFK and then Kennedy presidential assassination, studying American history, there's a thread in it about presidents who try to change the money system that get killed. And so there's theories about the greenback and Lincoln's creation of the greenback, and some say he's killed for that. And there's a famous, and sorry, let me not get on these tangents. Let me come and answer the question. That's a whole conversation we can get to later if you want to talk about like this kind of changes in the money system, what it can threaten, and how risky it might be for people who try to do that. But this is how I stumbled into it, and then I just started researching it. I was like every time, and this isn't minor stuff. And then I just did the research, and I'm like, so let's go back. I think I started in maybe even like
1638 or
this
something, I think.
1638. And so yeah, it's the first central bank in the modern central bank. And that was like the Bank of Amsterdam, I think. And so that's what our world is. It's run by central banks. Talk about technology, Saturn, long lasting. And people are like, technology's not Aquarius. Sorry, I want
Not
to go off and rant on that. But
you mean
I mean,
technology's not Gemini, or it's
no, they say it's both. People somehow recently have, there's this thing again on that app for debating, but there was this thing like, why are people saying Aquarius is technology? And people were
because
like ranting that it's not.
well,
And
it's because they haven't done 5 minutes of research, and you
yeah,
realize how much technology is Aquarius.
yeah. Or they haven't, and all I said was this Mercury boom, you drop Paulus boom, and it just, I mean, even without looking at transits, symbolically, and the textbooks will tell you it's technology. And then so anyhow, it's um but it relates to the longevity, and Saturn rules Gemini. So we're back. I just wanted to kind of underscore that. Like we're talking about a central bank, 1638 or whenever it is, Bank of Amsterdam, first modern central bank, first central bank at all. Then you go to the next cycle, and it's the first central bank in the way that central banking operates now. And I wish I could remember the exact reasons and the differences between the Bank of Amsterdam and the Bank of England. But there is some kind of technical change, and I think it has to do with like deposits or the way they do. I
Was
think
it? It
it's the
wasn't
paper
fractional reserve,
deposits.
was it? Oh,
I think it's the yeah. Let's get this up. Sorry, Cam. I wish my memory on this, and I could have even that video. I didn't go into the specificity around the actual real subtle distinctions between the Bank of Amsterdam and the Bank of England. But let me just
well,
run through them, and
well,
we can come back and do this. But so there's that, and then the next one is the American Revolutionary period, where you have the first currency in America and the first banks in America that were set up by the government, the first national banks and national currency. Then you have the greenback with Lincoln, and that's also when the greenback was created, the legislation was passed that set up the modern banking system we're still in. So that's 1860s. The one before that was 1780s, early 1780s, late
which was also
1770s.
Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini.
Yes, and the one in the during the Civil War period was Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries. It's the National Banking Act that sets up the way that banks are structured in America still today.
That, yep,
And that happened during Uranus and Gemini. And then the one during World War II
with
that we're
Bretton
still
Woods.
living in. All of these are still institutions that live today, too, in the one way, shape, or form. But that is the foundation of the IMF, the World Bank, Bretton Woods. And we have the whole system of the debt-based international dollar dominance American empire money system got created during Uranus and Gemini in 1940, I think 8 or 45. It's right in that zone. But so, those are two important to ignore. Like these aren't minor changes to the money system. They're
Yeah, this
creations
isn't
of
the Fed
foundational.
going up and down 1% on the interest rate. It's like, again, Bretton Woods is the reason why the American empire has literally conquered the world and been the world's police force. It's the reason OPEC exists. It's the reason the petrodollar exists. It's the reason everything is the way that it is. It's the reason the EU fucking exists. It's the reason why Japan and a lot of South Korea, all of those economies exist, is because of the
Yeah.
dollar.
Yep. And that is, I mean, this is where we start talking about like the trick of Mercury and the currency system. You'll hear this a lot, and this is true, and most people can agree with this, is like we're not taught this stuff in school. I mean, I wasn't sat down in second grade, third, fifth at high school. Here's the money system, here's how it works, here's what money is. No one ever went through that. You're not taught this stuff. I mean, let alone personal basics of personal finance. And so there is a kind of magic. Mercury is also magic, and I feel like with money it's a magical thing where it's like, just look over here and don't think about why the dollars exist and where the dollars come from. Like, you don't need to think about that. It's like in Star Wars, like Obi-Wan Kenobi just saying, you don't need to think about that. Just go watch football or whatever it is, your IG models.
Yeah.
And so that's why there's the mercurial quality to the currency, because really, who controls the currency? And we can bring up numerous quotes from powerful, important people in history, controls the society. If you control how the currency is printed, how much is printed, or how it's brought into existence and how much is brought into existence. If you can control that, you control the society.
And
Period.
this is what you know, I think me and Gordon talked about this on his podcast, but or on my podcast, but I think maybe not because I've heard him talk about this. This is what this war we're going into is about. It's about the currency system. Because I think when we talk about Uranus going into Gemini and the currency changing, notice the last few times America had Uranus in Gemini, World War II, Civil War, American Revolution. American Revolution was the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Civil War, the day the Civil War started, I don't know if I don't
Day
know if you
after.
watched my video, but the Mars Uranus conjunctions.
Mhm.
Did you see that?
No, no,
So
no, no, I didn't. I'll go back though. I want to.
Mars
Yeah.
conjoined Uranus on when we dropped the nuclear bomb. Mars conjoined Uranus the day the Civil War started, and then Mars conjoined Uranus in the U.S. Constitution. I mean, my bad, in the Sibley chart. So when we signed the Declaration of Independence, we were at war at that time. Every time there's a Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini, it has failed to be America not being in some sort of a major war.
Okay.
And
I love that. I need to go back to that research can because that sounds
well,
extremely
that's why I'm
important.
summer of 2026. Like in my opinion, my prediction is Russia is going to win, and we will have to involve NATO. That's how that is. And again, we want to take down Russia as a country. We want to put them on our currency because we don't like them being independent. We've never liked them in being, and there's just been we've I mean, since it was like what the 40s, we've had all this billions of dollars invested in their downfall. They're not just going to waste it. And then eventually with China too, I think where I disagree with Gordon is Gordon talks a lot about I think Martin Armstrong's work being much more of like,
Yeah.
oh, then the money goes in 2032 towards Beijing, and I just don't see that happening, like really at all. And we're going to get a little bit more into that part of it too, because
Good, good.
something I wanted to talk about with you is okay, if this like where I've really been coming from is like I've read Adam Smith, I've read Cantillon, I've read a lot of about capitalism and how all this emerged in like the very early 18th and 17th centuries, and there was this beautiful dream of how economies are supposed to work, getting away from the monarchy, getting away from the king and gold and stuff like that. And now we live in this time where we are taking on the changes without the framework of what it's supposed to be. And so, like you said, we've had these major changes with Uranus and Gemini with currency. People have talked about that being a CBDC, and I think that's a big part of the Pluto and Aquarius shift. I think it's a big part of Saturn and Neptune. It's all really there. I just think Uranus is going to be really that kind of pinpoint one. But what is because like where I've been coming from too, and I think I might have opened up with this. I can't remember. We talked a lot before we started, so I don't remember what I said
Yeah.
when we recorded or not. But like, what is the economic system of the future? Because it's not capitalism, it's not communism. That's Earth triplicity stuff. Now we're in
Yep.
air triplicity.
Yep.
What does that look like with this currency? I'm curious what your thoughts are on how this currency change looks like for you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yes. And I want to just say, because this is what be part of the answer for sure. Bank of England founded on 1694. The reason why it's considered the first central bank modern, there's a few reasons, but monopoly on currency issue. One of the primary reasons why the Bank of England is considered the first modern central bank is the authority to issue banknotes, and it's a monopoly over that. And this is the key concept. And there's a bunch of other stuff here. And just the date for the foundation of the Bank of Amsterdam is 1609. So people can go research that later. And it's the first public bank to offer accounts not directly convertible to coin. So it's the kind of
Mm.
thing where they're kind of changing the way you can kind of hold the value with the bank vis-a-vis. So, and yeah, that's a whole separate thing. But let me just come to the question on it. It relates to this first point. That was a ChatGPT output, by the way, about the monopoly on currency issue. So that might be hallucination, but I recall that's probably correct. And it's gotten better at this. But I think it has to do with the changes we're going into are the way that money is not an object. So I'm a big advocate of use cash, and I don't have my wallet here. I can go get
Well,
it, but I only
I,
spend cash, right? Because this is
I won't dox you, but like where
okay.
you live, it's kind of not like where I like. There's no point to using cash where I'm at. There's no point. Like I use a credit card for everything.
Yeah. When I've lived in China, where I actually didn't even carry anything but my phone, because you didn't have to carry anything, no keys or wallet. Everything's on the phone. All transactions are done through an app called WeChat, and there was another one, Alipay, I think, but it's all on the phone. And yeah, where I live now is it's a lot of people still use cash in Europe. I mean, it's common even in Germany. People still use cash because it's this tangible thing that you can see, right? I can stack cash and look at it and know how much cash I have. And that's good for budgeting and for frugalism and for just knowing where you stand in terms of what value you have in your possession. And so I think what's going to happen is that control of it is the number one theme, and we're talking about how governments and regulators, or hierarchies might be a better term, because I think there's a whole conversation we can have about government as we've known it ending in terms of
Well,
nation
that's
states.
well, that's
Yeah.
it's see, this is the thing about this conversation is that it's hard to just say, oh, it's about money because like um by 2036, the US Constitution looks like smart contracts. That's the reality. 2036 for people that don't know why, I just did a video about the US Civil War that's coming up. And the reason being is the Constitution has Saturn Pluto conjunct in Aquarius on the ascendant. And it's the most
Yes.
powerful document of giving people their rights and their liberties. I
Yes.
I love that part of Aquarius, but we're not in that part right now. And there's Saturn Pluto conjunctions and oppositions, and we haven't had a Saturn Pluto. We had a Saturn Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, but the Saturn Pluto opposition in Leo in Aquarius is in 2036, which sounds like that document ripping up. And essentially, what's
Yep.
going to happen is everything's going to be smart contracts. Everything's going to be based off the blockchain. And this is where I get into
Yep.
where I wanted to go with this was asking your opinion about like how the idea is like these autonomous corporations that run themselves that are faceless, and that the currency that they make gets distributed through like a UBI system, and then it's based off
Yep.
the smart contracts and your personal ledger too. Again, like the Constitution or all that stuff is how things run. Is that where are you at with that? Because that's
Yeah.
I'm accepting that fate at this point.
I mean, we're going there. I mean, they say BlackRock runs America. Larry Fink just came out 3 or 4 days ago and says we're going to be tokenizing the stock market and tokenizing all
Mm-hmm.
assets, and on the Ethereum blockchain. And so we know the tokenization, which Ethereum is distinct from Bitcoin because it's programmable. And so that's how Ethereum, at least for the last several years, has been known as the programmable blockchain, where smart contracts are found. And let me just say for the audience, what this means is that when you get in the context of a government currency, a new currency, and just let me just lay a few things out here, because I think we already have the new currency and it's called USDC. There's a company called Circle who is basically BlackRock, or bankster owned, and actually shouldn't say it quite as charged as that. The people that are in charge of the money system, there are people that we can identify in entities. And we can go to 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve Act. That actually creates our money system that we're in and radically alters it. There's a consortium of private banks that legislation gives those banks the power to run the money system. And so, yes, in a certain sense, it's still public because the Congress, it's elected, right? The public representatives signed away those powers and gave them to this private consortium. And it's very obtuse, and to really fully understand even what's happening in terms of how money comes into existence. But just to say, these are people on Wall Street, banks on Wall Street, okay, are part of having this power to issue and keep the money system going. Another example I'll say with this is when Obama got elected in 2008, that the great hope years, right? Hope and change. Nope, same. No, I'm just
Still,
kidding. I'm
still,
just
I'm
kidding.
still hoping. I still got hope.
Yeah, yeah, nope. I love the nope same, but it was leaked in those Podesta emails that came out that WikiLeaks. Now we're back to WikiLeaks, but they Chase, I think it was, or Citi, one of those two. Some execs had sent an email to the teams of people around Obama that were directly connected to those networks of power and said, "Here's who we want Obama to put into the key positions," and guess who kept to those key positions? Those people. And so what I'm trying to say is that this effectively Wall Street or banking system or money structure or the power structure that controls the issuance of currency, those folks are talking about in our current moment tokenizing everything. So that's Larry Fink and BlackRock. Let's see, I was saying,
Well, I would go a level up, and people know I'm a big Allison McDowell fan, and that it's not that they want to, it's that infrastructure is there. Like it's already there, it's being built out. Now it's just getting, for example, like I one of my most proudest predictions is I called the day that the Fed would raise interest rates like 6, 7, 8 months in advance, like to the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people are still banking on the Fed lowering interest rates, and they're not, because this is how we detangle the system to implement the new one. No one's going to want to go to a new currency if if the dollar's strong and things are cheap. But if things get really crazy and out of control, then you'd be more open minded to implementing it. And so I'm very much in the space that like this is all going down no matter what. It's not a if, it's more so of a when. And I think that's where astrology comes into play, where
Yeah.
it seems as if, I mean, I kind of want to ask you about your opinion on 2025 versus 2026, because
Bro,
because because both
fuck.
2025 we get the little sweet taste of Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus and Gemini. And then they both go back in, and then 2026 they lock it in.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, for me, I think what we'll see is probably Russia win in 2025. I'm still if my money's kind of on the Venus retrograde of 25 being like China, Taiwan if that goes down. But I think 2026 is probably when NATO gets involved in Eastern Europe, and that somehow we get attacked here. Because something I want to go back to is the Mars Uranus conjunctions. The Mars Uranus conjunctions involve America being attacked, because the reason why we can leave out World War I is World War I. Okay, this I think it was the sinking of the Lithuania or something like that. The
Yeah.
Lithuania, it just doesn't count. Like
Lusitania.
Lusitania, there we go. American Revolution, we had redcoats on our door. American Revolution, Fort Knox, Fort Sumter or Fort Knox. I can't remember. Battle of that. Then World War II was we got Pearl Harbor. And so those were the three times that America was attacked. I mean, besides 9/11, but 9/11 was Saturn, Pluto, and Gemini. So,
Yeah.
we'll take
Gemini
that.
back.
Yeah, so exactly.
The
But
seventh whole sign of the Sibyl. Again, back to whole sign transits. Again, you can just see it's seventh house, the partner, the opposite, right? You love your spouse, you hate your spouse, right?
well, that's why I
So you
talked
get
about it
you get
is
these
as
attacks.
it's the natal promise of this country, is that Mars Uranus is that Mars Uranus conjunction, Mars also being
Mars,
the 12th
Uranus.
ruler, is like we're promised that that's going to be a
Yep.
battle, a conflict. We don't get out of that.
Yep.
But anyway,
Yep.
what's your opinion
Yep.
between the difference of 25 and 26? And for those that don't know, we have both Saturn and Neptune dipping and not conjoining, but getting really close in 2025, and Uranus dipping into Gemini in 2025. But they both go back into Pisces and Taurus for the rest of 25. And then in 2026, they fully stay in those zodiac signs.
Yeah, let me quick. I remember now. I want to just come. I want to come to this because real quick, and I'll come back to it. 2025 November to me is when it's going to go down, and some major crisis is going to happen. It's second half of 2025 that, as an astrologer, all the cycle work I've done, everything I've studied, that
Why?
is when shit is going to hit the fan.
Is it the Jupiter Saturn trine?
It's the Ptolemaic eclipse timing technique that when you run the eclipses that we've just had visible across Texas, crisscrossing, and you
Yeah.
run that Ptolemaic mathematics, and then so what real quickly, what Ptolemy does is there's a system in his text that then can tell us, project it out, when the eclipse effects are likely to hit. And he has a system for it. When you run it for the one in October 2023, you run it for the one we're about to have on 8 April, and they actually have a shared overlap of when the effects are going to hit. And that is, I think, September, October, November 2025.
Yeah, I'm looking at the solar eclipse in Virgo at the end of September of 25, and then there's a lunar eclipse in Pisces. Which one?
Yeah. Then there's the anaretic degree of both Neptune and Pluto simultaneous on September 1st, September 2nd, September 3rd, depending on your time zone.
Isn't that 25? Ooh, 24. Pluto's
Oh,
locked into
sorry,
Pl-
that's 24. I wish I have a video on my channel. People can watch the rebirth of America. That goes into all of this in detail. But let me just pull up
Yeah, I would
September.
say Pluto's locked in
Yeah,
after
sorry.
November, I think.
It's the anaretic degree of so let's see here, August 2025. There it is. Neptune is retrograde, and Neptune comes, and so is Uranus
You
retrograde.
said
So they
August.
both are, there it is. It's in November 2025. Uranus is anaretic in Taurus, and Neptune is anaretic in Pisces. And that's during the overlap of the eclipse. And Mars will be opposite Uranus so going back to Mars Uranus hard aspects on the day of 5 November 2025.
Do
Mars
you remember the 5
triggers.
of November?
Yeah, remember the 5th of November. Yeah, there it is. But so this is my hot zone. Quickly, can I just say this quickly so I don't forget it, so
No,
the audience can know what I'm saying. So
I'm just
I
kidding.
believe Circle. So Circle is the company. It's owned by the same people, and they're running on the Ethereum blockchain what's called a stable coin. This is what's going to happen with the CBDCs, almost guaranteed. The money that's issued on these stable coins will have in the program, if you spend it on Cam White's website for an astrology reading from Cam White, then you're turned off. The money stops working. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that's just an example of like a specific how bad it could
Yeah.
potentially get, right?
Well, I mean, they're
Um,
going to use it for the climate change stuff. Like, I mean, the big thing that, like, I'm in the
yes.
carnivore spaces and they're like, you can only buy 8 ounces of meat a month and stuff like that. And if not, you just got to supplement with bugs.
Yeah. I've been eating a ton of beef, by the way. I know we talked about that. I mean, as I've known you, I was a vegetarian, and my health issues, as soon as I ate that beef, man,
Dude, I get,
it felt so
I've had
good. I
clients,
love it.
I tell my clients
Yeah.
about it and they get all triggered and some people get upset about it. But like, I've had so many clients come back to me like, dude, I've lost so much weight. I feel so much fucking better. I'm like, I wouldn't be fucking telling people if I didn't actually think it was. I'm not a fucking doctor, but like, also, what the fuck does a doctor know these days?
It's a superfood, and look, we have to worship the cow because it's a superfood. We get the milk from it, we get the meat from it. I think and there's regenerative farming if you're in the carnivore space. I know some friends in Texas that got into that, and I mean, you can raise these cows and love them, and
Oh,
then
and I mean they
honor them and
provide
feed them, and yeah,
they regenerate the earth, especially after what
yeah,
monocropping has done. But
yeah,
I'm looking at this November 5th day. I've never looked at this Mars Uranus opposition. This is
yeah,
spicy. This is
yeah,
spicy.
spicy. Because what happens? Look, here's November 5th, 2025, and then how many days later, on 8 November,
I'll go
Uranus
ahead
is
and
back in Taurus. And this is the Pearl Harbor Uranus and Taurus transit. It
uh,
comes to Gemini, then it goes back into
wow.
Taurus, and it's Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor
And
happened
that's what
on sorry, I just pulled up the chart for
7
so
December 1941 or
okay,
40,
so hold
yeah,
on.
7 December 41. And
Yeah, but
there's
what
Uranus at
2843?
Saturn. It's Uranus, Saturn in Taurus and Anaretic, and Jupiter in Gemini, triggering that seventh
Mm.
house, Mars, Uranus, and the Sibley. And
So I
so,
have that at 20 okay. This is why I like astrology. You just push the button and go.
yeah.
Um
Okay, there you are. Let me get you're in the software there. I was looking at mine there. So
Yeah,
there you
yeah, I'm
see
in the
7
soft because
December.
I
Yeah.
realized
Okay.
neither of us have a chart pulled up, and I bet you everyone's
Yeah.
probably pissed
Yeah.
off. Oh
Yeah.
wow,
We're pissed
no
off. Yeah.
shit, you're not kidding.
Not,
There's
and that's after the first stint in Gemini. It goes back to Taurus, and that happens
wow
in 2025 at the end of the year
with
during this shared
the
eclipse peak of these two major visible eclipses in America. And by the way, this is how Robert Zoller predicted 9/11. He ran the Ptolemaic timing techniques, and he says in that newsletter, he's like, look for August into September for the terrorists to attack the East Coast or something. And he ran the eclipse path. That was the Europe eclipse of 99. And you run the Ptolemaic numbers, and it starts getting into the East Coast. And that chart, by the way, if you look up the eclipse chart of the 99 eclipse for DC, that's the nastiest chart I've ever seen in terms of hard aspect. It's like Mars opposite Saturn on the IC and on the MC. And if you pull up the eclipse chart for not the one that the one we just went through in October,
oh
and
yeah.
look where Mars was in that eclipse chart. Let me just get it up here quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, like one of my things that I couldn't get over, and I made a TikTok and a post and a video about this, is that this eclipse over America is going over Eagle Pass, and it's on this Mars Saturn conjunction, and there's just no way this to me, it's like okay, maybe it's not on that day, but I mean, like we had that whole the Israel Palestine thing happen almost immediately before that eclipse, like during literally
Oh yeah.
the waxing moon, like the quarter moon.
Yeah, the sun had come into Libra, and then October 7th happens. And it's clearly, and this is the thing when I tell people cardinal sign eclipses change reality, period.
Mm-hmm.
COVID eclipses are cardinal sign eclipses. Now we're in the first cardinal eclipses since
Wow.
that time, and our reality is getting changed. Like October 7th is a perfect example because it changed everything. And by the way, this is where I liked real quick, and I don't want to, the anti-V video you made, I don't want to trigger the algorithm here, but um,
Oh,
at one point you were like, you can get a room of people together that are like share the same opinion on that issue, and they're all happy, and they're all like, they're wrong. Bring up Palestine, Israel, and watch it just cut up in another slice,
oh
and
yeah.
that's like that's the idea of the cardinal eclipses will trigger things that really can chop up communities. There's fracturing because new births are initiated, and when you start doing new things, not everybody wants to go with you.
Oh, because
Not
new
everybody
things.
can.
I was going
Yeah.
to ask you why is that, but you're saying because it's a cardinal, it's a new sign. So people
Yeah.
don't know cardinal signs, cardinal zodiac signs at the beginning of new season, so they represent the beginning of something new, something. This is that eclipse on October, you know, 13th here. What are you talking about with Mars,
Okay, let me see here. This
or are
is
you talking about
October
the exact
13th.
moment?
I'm getting this up to, yeah, the exact moment of the eclipse is October 14th, 1356 for DC. Yeah, this is a
Oh,
technique,
for
everybody, where
DC.
you're looking at the charts of the
Can
eclipses.
you share your
And
screen, or can I? Let me
I, if you
actually.
let me, I will. Yeah, I will for sure.
All right.
Let me see
Sorry,
here.
boomer moment.
You,
Okay,
the arrow.
try it
Okay.
now.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the chart. And this is why I'm worried is that look how angular Mars, it's the most angular planet. And this is the technique that you use. You pull up the exact moment of an eclipse, you run the Ptolemaic timing, it tells you when it will peak, and then you, to delineate what's going to happen, you look at the planet. This is one way to do it that's most angular. And Mars is right there, 5 degrees, less than five, or just over 5 degrees from the midheaven in Scorpio. And that's a strong Mars, angular, war, right? That's classic, just a war signature. Now, this chart isn't as bad as the 1999 eclipse. Let me just pull that one up just to give people
So
context.
what's the
Yeah.
Ptolemaic? Because now I'm gonna
Yeah.
obsess over that because now that's actually
Okay.
something. Because so many techniques, I'm like I don't care about that, but I'm
Yeah.
like okay, wait, we can predict 9/11 with this. I need to get into it.
Yeah.
So what did you say?
Yeah.
It's we're looking at what?
So what you do, so like this is the eclipse chart. You pick the location where it's visible, and then you, if it's, I mean, and I have it all written down. It's kind
Oh,
of
you just
complicated,
pick the
but
location that it's visible.
yeah, and that's what you're trying to say in this location. When is this eclipse effect going to hit this area where the eclipse is happening? And if the sun is in you divide the from the ascendant to the descendant, you divide it into three. And this is what Ptolemy does. He says if it's in the first third, then it will happen in the first third of the activation period. If it's in the middle third, like this chart, it's in the middle period of the activation. And actually, let me get this doesn't look like the eclipse chart, so I gotta go to the 14th.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
I was about to say that doesn't
Yeah,
look
what
right,
the
by the
hell is
way.
going on there? There's the eclipse chart. And now it's Mars is still there. It's a little bit farther away from the midheaven, but it's still the most angular planet. Maybe Jupiter in the fourth is there's a debate. I think Mars is closer. Yeah, Mars is closer to the IC axis, midheaven axis. But so the Ptolemy technique, and by the way, this isn't going to tell it in detail because you really need to go back to the formulas. And Dr. Ben Dykes teaches this technique. So this is where I learned it. You can go on his website. I think it's called World Astrology Basics or something. And he used it. He shows how it predicts the assassination of Franz Ferdinand because there's an eclipse that ran through Europe in 1912 that when you run the timing and it goes right through the peak period, and it's the chart that you have to look at. And so here it is. It's the middle quadrant. So that's, and it's one, and it's, okay, this is the other key thing. You have to time how long the eclipse happens in a location. So it's like usually between 2 and 3 hours. And that gives you an exact amount, like 2.3 hours, for example. That means 2.3 years. So that's the Ptolemies, like solar eclipses, it's every hour is a year. Lunar eclipses, every hour is a month. And so we know that this is, so this is basically how you're doing it. I don't want to say too much more. There's another thing where you determine how many months from the date of the eclipse you start your period. And then you go through the 2.3 years, and then it's the middle of that beginning period that has the active zone. And then so you run this for both eclipses that are back to back visible in America, and it's the active zone is September through November, effectively 2025.
Well, so
And
then,
yeah,
I mean, sorry to bring this back, but
yeah, go ahead.
we were talking about what are your thoughts on what's the difference between 25 and 26 with at least the
Yeah,
Uranus and Saturn and Neptune ingress? I mean, if you want to, I don't
yeah,
know if you want to
yeah.
keep
Let's go
sharing your
into that. I
screen
mean, my
or
thing is that one scenario. Do you want me to stop sharing, or can I walk through
that.
some of this on the
Oh, you're gonna
screen?
okay, you're gonna walk through. That
Yeah,
would be my next
just
question.
so people can see. It's by this time Uranus is about to go back into Taurus. Now we're in Pearl Harbor resonance, and
Yeah, no, I
so
think the U.S. is for sure gonna get attacked.
And let me, I'll stop sharing now because I'm going to get lost in this, and maybe you can share. But this is what I think will happen. It was just one
Just
scenario. And by the
tell
way,
me what.
let me
Tell me.
tell. I'm going to give people this disclaimer: we're in an age of air, not an age of earth. The ways these things manifest now may be totally different. It may be more mental. It may be more on the screens. It may be more like the movie Civil War, the Alex Garland picture that's
Oh,
about to come
I'm
out.
so looking forward to that. I'm like,
Yeah.
please psyop me, Daddy. What am I expecting here?
Yeah.
What do they want me to know?
But it's capturing the symbolism, right? And what if it's just captured in our minds and hearts now and not kinetic? That's what I'm holding out for. Age of air, it's digital, it's not kinetic. All right. So let me just disclaimer that. That's what I am praying for and hoping can happen. One and two, we have some really elegant outer planet configurations that are extremely rare that have always brought golden ages. And those hit in 2026. And I'm hoping that AI, I'm giving you the good news right now because we're about to talk about fucked up shit. All right. The golden
Well, my
age
so
that
so
AI may bring.
I
Yeah.
don't mean to
Okay.
interrupt you, but I
Yeah. Go
think
ahead.
both of these things happen simultaneously.
I do too. I do too.
I
I
don't
think.
believe that it's all bad and then all good. I believe
Yeah.
these two things, it's for example, it's like these worlds will collide. That like, yes, the old guard of the American Empire is still going to use NATO to address Russia, a tale as old as time, and it's going to be this bigger conflict with America and this dying, imperial nation. And it's at the same time, AI is going to revolutionize the way that we do business, the way that we communicate with people, all this other stuff. But here's my thing: AI is now. It's
Yeah.
not 25. So what's Uranus and Gemini besides currency
No.
change?
No, but AI, you got to understand, in my opinion, at least, AI has been released, but there's things being built right now that I haven't that aren't released yet.
Yeah.
For example, and let me just show your audience this, just as an example. I'm going to share my screen again if you don't mind, because this is what I've
Yeah,
been
you should
working
still be able
on.
to, right?
Okay, this is what I've been working on with AI. And let me see here. Was it here? Yeah. So everything on my website was only because AI has given me the ability to code. I don't even know I know what databases and languages I've used, but I can't tell you how to do this. AI did it. So this is all real-time loading. I don't have to plug anything in. It tells me where the planets are. This is the color. This is how I see astrology,
Oh,
colors.
that's
This is
interesting.
my whole
Okay.
sign rulership index, which I have my paper coming out soon, which is based on the Paulus stuff, which is my formula for it tells me in the any moment what planet is it's kind of like the final dispositor, but using all these forms of whole sign rulership, which planet is responsible for most of the transiting sky. So right now we're in a very solar moment because we have Leo, Sun, and Mercury all in sun ruled signs. So the sun has a higher assignation, and then I make art with it. So this is using Valens and Tusser's color correspondences. And this is all, but the point is it's all real time and then the tarot. So I built this stuff. I'm just a little astrologer out here, like grooving with my passions and making cool astro stuff. Think about the people that are building tools and even coding within AI or within other things in the outer world, like how goods and services and the supply chain and all of the stuff that's about to continue to radically change as a result of these AI tools interfacing with builders that are making things in their specific fields that they could have never made before. Literally, I could never have done any of that. It was in my mind, but I was always like, shit, I'm gonna have to hire coders. So if I ever want to do that, and I did it myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what coding is. So people that know how to code using AI to revolutionize. So I think what will happen in this scenario is something like an AGI or even just a revolution of the materiality, some way, shape, or form using the AI tools. And I want to say this, I think we don't know. That's the core concept here.
That's the fun
That's
part.
it's the fun part is that there's an element of surprise like COVID. I remember partying, man,
Dude,
December 20th,
I told all my
2019.
friends this was before I had any respect in like my regular friends world of like astrology, like doing astrology, and I was like, dude, 2020, it's gonna be bad. They're like, ah, no. And then I remember that eclipse on Christmas being like weird new
Yeah,
virus in Wuhan, and I was like, this is it, guys, get ready. And I had no idea. Like I'm
yeah,
thinking bad virus. I didn't realize
yeah,
they'd lock down the world. I didn't know
I
that
know.
they could do that.
But so that's exactly so I was in China in Guangdong and I left because I was about to get locked down. I fled. But I remember in China hanging with my girlfriend. We were having like an awesome New Year's Eve. And I knew some stuff was coming down, but I look back at myself then, had no idea that the basically powers that be in this reality, Saturn, right? The Saturn powers are just going to flex so hard, man. They
Dude,
flexed on
yeah.
this world so fucking hard.
They said, we're
And
locking you down. You're fucking, everything's on your
yeah,
phone, and we're
yeah,
all in cahoots with
yeah,
one another. And
yeah.
dude, it was,
They're like,
it,
watch me, that meme. It's like, watch this. Look at us. Look at us. That's what they were doing. They were flexing so
I
hard.
love that
And
term as a flex because it
yeah,
really like from a astrology perspective of Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn. Like I've been thinking a lot more about that recently. Like it's like no, Saturn, Pluto conjunction Capricorn was like that was the system because the whole virus came from the system, and then the system like implemented its rules on how to deal with it, and it failed. And the system also implemented its solution to it. Like that was nothing. That was
yeah,
nothing
it
but
was
this, but systems.
it was the basically the powers flexing how much authority they can deploy and enforce. At least one part of it. And we all, I mean, I couldn't travel. I had no idea. There was times in 2021. It's like, where the fuck am I going to live? Like, will I be trapped forever? I mean, these were real fears, and that's minor compared to what other people are going through. Like, people lost businesses, and it was all about this Aquarian. And talk about a new tech, Saturn being important for technology. I mean, often tech is used for war, control, government structure. This is what kind of what we're going back to the money system would be the keyword. Money, Mercury, system is Saturn, the money system. And it's often about controlling society. I just go back to that. And we saw that during the COVID years. So let me just say, we don't know what's going to happen, what's about to happen in 2020, 25 and 2026. And I think it's worth just telling everybody and acknowledging like this could be some wild AI. What if something gets released, or aliens? People have talked about some form of
Nope,
that.
nope, nope. So here you want to know my opinion on the alien part of it?
Yep, yep.
I believe aliens exist, but I believe this whole idea that they're hiding him, dude. And I've talked about this on my channel before, and people are probably annoyed. There's this crazy video evidence of the missing Malaysian Airlines going missing, and it's all documented by government drones and a government satellite. That just so happened to be right over the plane right when it went missing. I believe it's a lot of military tech that
Oh, me too.
they're not telling us about, and I believe that's 10,000 times more believable than somehow aliens are down here
Yep.
and they're working with the government and we don't know somehow.
I
And
put it in quotes, aliens, but wink, wink. It's really the psyop that will be military,
it's gonna
another
be
kind of, you know,
well. So my other thing is what people. So everyone keeps talking about. Oh, it's aliens because Aquarius. No one's talking about dogs and cats and the buttons. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's all of these videos online of people programming their voices and saying outside or snack or pet or I love you. And these dogs and cats are pushing these buttons. Dude, they're
yeah,
forming sentences.
performing
Dogs
sentences.
and
Yep.
cats are forming fucking sentences. Like, I'm not worried
Yeah.
about AI. What happens when my dog can just read Shakespeare to me?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Or
coming.
the whale languages are another example with AI. They're actually decoding now. See, this is the stuff I'm talking about, Cam. This is the wild card where yes, AI is here, but look what it's about every month, new discoveries. I mean, we might discover something so profound, like the Jesus consciousness, and we know we have this greater realization that everybody is love. It's pure divinity every moment of
I
every
think that's
time,
I
and we
think
have
that's
this
Pluto and
collective awakening.
Pisces. I think that's Pluto a little bit
Yeah,
more Pluto and Pisces.
yeah,
Like, but I think this is a golden age of new fun things coming out. I don't think we really solidify that because again, if we look at history to repeat, Saturn, Uranus, and Gemini was again atomic bomb being developed, all of these new war technologies, and then what happened post-war? Saturn and Uranus both went into Cancer, and all that technology and industry just went to making dishwashers and washing machines for
yeah,
women, and it was the
yeah,
liberation of the housewife, which we
yeah.
have both Saturn going into Gemini with Uranus, and they both ingress into Cancer again. And I think this is
At
where
the
you get
same
like
time.
Blade Runner 2049 stuff,
Yeah.
like your AI robot wife that does everything for you,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
I'm just going to say this is my timing of it too, by the way. Every time Uranus gets into Cancer, it's just an interesting cycle to look at because it's like reconstruction. It is like the post-war new world and all, and like the 40s and 50s and the booms that happen. It is, all of that, and we're going to live through that, here very, very soon. So that's just as interesting as like getting excited about the 2030s, and when this is over, we're going to have an awesome time, I think, and with these technologies, and how they can extend our powers as human beings. And so Um, but yeah, just to come back, I think it could be fast and swift too. I think that that might be part of the age of air. Whatever's going to happen might be like 1 day or 2 days. This
Well,
is
because
another
they
prediction I'm
can.
in. Yeah,
That's because that's the thing. It's not an Earth where it takes like, oh, we have to
yeah,
sign these documents.
yeah,
It's just they could
exactly.
just, and that's where I'm at with the money system. Well, this
Yeah,
coming back to the question I originally asked you, but like,
yeah,
what is it about Uranus dipping into Gemini in 2025 versus when
yeah,
it gets fully locked in 2026? Because what the days that you're talking about, that's more Pearl Harbor stuff that
yeah.
you were saying. But in June of 20, I think it's May or June of 2025, Uranus dips into Gemini. Is that because I personally think the Jupiter Uranus conjunction is the Fed being like, because we already know they have the back, like the back piping, the
Sure.
underground piping
Yeah,
for the CBDC. I'm
yeah,
thinking of the Jupiter Uranus conjunction and again the Mars
yeah,
Saturn conjunction. We're going through some sort of economic failure around this
yeah,
time this year. It's just really about when. And then
yeah.
I think Jupiter Uranus is like, hey, by the way, we kind of have this new Fed coin going on. And then I think Uranus and Gemini is like, we're going to deploy it to Connecticut or something like that.
Well, I think this, so yeah, I'm glad we're talking now more local in time because the rest of this year is so interesting with this exact topic. First of all, I think the CBDC may already be here, and it's called USDC, and they're going to adopt it through something called stablecoin legislation. So there's already a bunch of articles written about it, but basically, just like they did with the Federal Reserve Act, they will use powers of the government to basically let private companies run it. And so they'll incorporate somehow USDC and maybe USDT, which is called, one's called Tether and one's called Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at all of the people that are writing about who runs those stuff, that all those things on the back end, and there's whole rabbit holes there. Whitney Webb has written a lot about this. That the
I love
stable
Whitney Webb
coin,
on this.
yeah,
Yeah.
the CBDC is the stable coins, and they're already here. So that's on my bingo card. Whether it's Fed coin, I don't. I think it's more likely to be already here, and they're just going to push the button and make it go live for regulations
Well,
somehow.
that's what I'm saying is like
But
it's
it
it's
comes
not that.
later.
Yeah. Well, but what do you think between 2025 2026? Because it's
Yeah,
like what it's clear 2026 we're there, but what is this little
yeah.
peak of Uranus and Gemini in 25?
No,
Like I
no,
can't get
this
over
is
that.
so it comes to me back to two words: Carter administration. And it's Mars retrograde in Leo, Cancer, the last time that happened. Carter administration, Jupiter in Gemini, Carter administration, and it's wild inflation. It's the second leg of the inflation runaway
That's
stuff. And I think that happens this year at the end of the year, and on the backs of that is when we're going to have the impetus for the bigger regulatory
that's really interesting
shifts.
because
And
oh
no,
well, because I
it's
was
what
gonna
you
say
said
this.
earlier. They can't lower rates because if they lower rates,
No,
they just, yeah, they have to keep
that's
it
their
higher,
only
keep it
ammo.
going.
That's their
Yeah,
only ammo. But
yeah,
again, they want to bring it at this way so they can crash it. Because once it's crashed is when they can just say, and again, we're in
exactly.
$36 trillion in debt. Like that's
Yep.
not like something that you just like go back to the gold standard or issue new fiat. It's like you literally, and again, we are the superpower of the world. America is we literally rewrite the rules in the system and say pretty much fuck you. Like that's how we're gonna do it now.
Well, and this is one of my, I guess, predictions or just things that are on my mind with 2024, that period of that overlap and fall 2025. I think it will. This is when the nastiest crashes are going to happen. Where they're going. This is. I think it's going to happen as far out as fall 2025, when you get the nasty crash. Because look at this eclipse that's about to hit. I'm going to share my screen again and show
Which
everybody
one? I'm looking
the
at it too
one
here. This
the
eclipse.
yeah. Just pull it up. The April
This
one that's
equi
visible. The April 8th one that's
Oh,
visible.
oh,
Put it
you're
for
talking about
Washington
2020. You're
D.C.
talking about
Yeah, Washington.
2024.
But it hit. But the impact is going to be 2025 using Ptolemy. And
Oh, because you're using Ptolemy.
yeah,
Okay.
do it
Yeah.
in the Washington chart if you can,
Yeah,
and
let me
pull up
do
for
that.
DC.
Because where I'm at with it is, yeah, I don't think because I mean the last crazy eclipse wasn't that crazy, like the Great American Eclipse. It was like, oh my God, Donald Trump, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I was like, ah.
Epstein. It was Epstein. I actually, in my talk, The Rebirth of America, I run through a few of these, and it was in the exact peak using Ptolemy was both the Trump impeachment and the Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself and isn't dead. Those events happened right in the peak, and that would fit with the eclipse, right? The
I'm saying
fall of the.
that's not banging enough for me. That's not
But no,
banging
but
enough.
it was banging for that time. But look at this chart. Look where Mars and Saturn are. What house are they in,
Oh,
Cam?
yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing that's
Yeah,
got my attention on this eclipse is
Yeah.
It's ruled by Mars, and it's a
Yeah.
Mars Saturn conjunction. We don't get out of
And
that one.
the illusion of the debt system and the shared assets, and we go back to the
Well,
Piscean. I think the world's going to wake up, and they already are. They're going to say, "Fuck your bonds." But the people in America have an answer to this already. You don't think they've war gamed this out?
oh
They
yeah, but
know,
it's
and it's
but
going to be
that's
the digital blockchain stuff that they then say, "Now here's the
well,
new system."
well,
Yeah,
that's what's crazy to me about Saturn Neptune is Saturn Neptune Pisces is like, ooh, but like what's actually real? And then Saturn Neptune Aries is like, ha, like you're actually like, like pretty much gotcha, bitch. Like, what is it? What does it make you pay attention to this hand while I rob you with this hand?
yeah,
And
yep,
then
yep,
the old
yep,
switcheroo. Like, there's nothing more
yep.
stark to me than the Saturn Neptune straight ingress into Aries. It is like you
No,
are
no, no.
tripping on
So,
hallucinogens, and then all of a sudden the
yeah,
like cops raid your house, and you're like, what's going on?
yeah. But we get it for like 6 months with Neptune in 2025 and 3 months for Saturn in 2025. And
And so
that's
you're
why I
saying,
think it's 2025 is what I've been telling everybody. Like, this year is awesome. The rest of this year is going to be fucking, it's a beautifully creative. I love the Venus stuff. This eclipse with exalted Venus, sextile Jupiter and Taurus and Saturn. It's like, this is the peak
oh,
amazing
I
creativity.
don't care for Jupiter squaring Saturn this year. I think that's gonna get
Well,
goofy.
but it's
But yeah,
setting. I think it
May,
will. But I mean,
the
it's
second
gonna,
part of April, May, and June kick ass.
yeah,
August or July is kind of boring. August sucks, but the rest of the year is kind of boring. It's like just the end
yeah.
of the year and the election. Because I think the other part of it is I don't know if you watched my video on the Civil War, but have you ever heard of contingent election?
No.
Okay, so my prediction is a contingent election is going to happen, which is when no presidential candidate hits 270. And what
Mm,
happens is the House votes for the president and the
house.
Senate votes for the vice president. And there's no fucking rules on how they get to do it. There's
Yeah,
no rules. And also, if they can't figure out something, there's a good chance the Secretary of State, which would be Anthony Blinken, gets to be the
yeah,
president. Also, no one really has the fucking exact answer to this, but this could be a
yeah,
situation where Kamala Harris could actually
yeah,
swear in the next president, depending on
yeah,
the situation. Because of our people like RFK, which like I'm a huge RFK fan, but like he's gonna fuck this whole thing up. Not his fault. Maybe it is. I don't know. But RFK between Biden and Trump, like if they all they have to do is just put it just below, like maybe give one state to RFK,
oh yeah,
what that
oh
is,
yeah.
and we don't hit 270.
Well, this is the thing. When I say this year's, like, we've enjoyed already like the oomph of the amazing part of 2024, and I've been telling people like, shit, it's been awesome. Nothing's happened yet. And I just tell people, just wait, because we
Yep.
haven't had this eclipse in April. Like, I think shit's about to
Shit's a
this
well, I
this year
think
is about to go crazy and then start deteriorating fast and go into like crazy scenarios like you mentioned.
well, I
But
think
it's
also
setting
too.
up 2025. You see, that's what we begin 2025 with this insanity. And that's when I think it really goes, even more absurd because of the Aries ingresses that we talked about during much of 2025, and then the Uranus ingress that's during some of 2025. Like, so just to say, that's why I was saying 2020. I feel like the second half of 2024 it does shift, and we're starting to be pulled into that,
Well, I feel like
but it's not going to be on the same level.
2024 ends in October because then there's a weird period between October and March that is this transferring period where Mars is
Yeah,
retrograde, but then Mars stations direct, Venus goes retrograde. And again, where I
it's
can't,
April.
dude, yes, dude,
Venus
hold on.
doesn't station direct until April, man,
I feel like
and then
I feel like I don't get
uh,
to talk to any astrologers
yeah,
about this anymore, but I want to
yeah,
just talk about just for a second how in that time in April, every single fucking thing was
yeah,
within a 10-degree part of the sky or a 20-degree part of the sky. It is from 10 degrees Aries to like again
mm,
23 Pisces. We have
yeah,
Mercury, Venus, Sun, Neptune, the nodes, Saturn. We'll have
yeah,
eclipses there.
yeah,
And everything's going like this over that part of the sky the whole time.
yeah, yeah.
What's going on in this area of new beginnings and
Yeah,
endings?
I know. I think it has to do with yeah, I mean, what is Aries? Fire, new fire. It's just, I think the war stuff is when this is all a major theme of
My
2025 and
my bet is
2026.
my bet is this is Taiwan. Honestly, I called Venus, so I can't find me and my editor looked for this video, and I think it was over on my Patreon. But I said at the last Venus when Venus left shadow, it's like we saw that with Russia. Venus left shadow and then they invaded Ukraine. And then I was like, when Venus entered shadow, I was like, I wonder if a war pops off. I wasn't expecting Israel Palestine because they get in a fight
Yeah.
every 5 minutes.
I know, I
Right.
know. I
And
wasn't
it was one of
either.
those things where
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't. I was like, is this a big deal? I feel like they're always fighting, and there's like,
Yeah.
this is a big deal. So I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking at this Venus retrograde as because again, China can only invade Taiwan in the spring or the fall. So I'm
Yep.
really looking at this as like possibly that time that all goes down.
I think so too. And I've done work on Mars direct stations, and it's just uncanny. You can lay it out. And let me try to remember it here. Pearl Harbor happens within, it's like a 2 month period of a Mars direct station.
I remember you telling me
Nine
about that.
11, 9/11. Like, so it's that direct station to Mars.
D-Day.
D-Day is the other big one. It's 25 February, Mars stations direct. And so from that period, that's the real hot zone to me in the first part of 2025, where some kind of new war or new. When does Uranus ingress? The exact date,
Uranus
the first
ingress
ingress into
into
Gemini.
May. Okay, maybe it is June. It's like I get confused with
Yeah,
Saturn, Jupiter, and then Uranus of what days.
because look
Um.
at that square with Uranus and Mars that also happens right as it's ingressing.
Oh yeah,
That looks very
that's right
kinetic
on
to
Trump's
me.
ascendant. Oh, that's gonna be fun.
I mean,
Um.
that looks like a wild kickoff to Uranus and Gemini,
There we
where
go. It
yeah,
ingresses. Oh, with Venus. I love that.
yeah,
On July 7th.
and
Yeah, and
but Mars had just squared it a few days before that. In now that was a Leo, that was a fixed square, but still you're getting in now what you've well the Sibley co-presence, and then you've tripped on what you told me earlier. These mapping those Mars Uranus conjunctions. Like there's something with Mars Uranus that's a unique feature of timing this subcycle.
well, and I in my video,
Yeah,
my on the because this is in my video of like the World War III, Civil War is like I can't
yeah,
understand why Uranus and Gemini is war. Like I just wonder if that's more Sibley natal promise stuff or if there's something I'm missing here. But what this looks like to me is like again because I keep to bring this back to the currency. It's like I almost wonder if they bring it down. War happens, we get distracted from it, and then in the meantime they're like while we all look over here, they kind of change everything, and then it's like, oh, by the way, here's a new currency system,
yeah,
so then we can also fund this war and get the
yeah.
economy right back on track and drop unemployment.
Well, and new lockdowns, right? Like it's not going to be. I think for COVID, it'll be like
Ooh,
there's
you
a
think
nuclear threat, and
I?
now there's going to be like I mean, wartime. We've never lived in a true wartime world where if it gets really bad, like you
I
can't
don't know if
even
they'll do
go down the
lockdowns
street.
again. I don't
Well, but I'm
know.
just, but like closing of international borders, let's just say
Oh
that,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
NATO's, and I don't mean like literally in your city in the middle of America that's not a location of war, but like you won't be able to travel. Borders are going to be shut until all this
Very
gets
hard, very hard.
resolved.
I
And
mean,
that's
they
why I
were.
would tell people like if you went out of America, get out. It's 2024, get out. Or but because you start talking 2025 and then into 2026, and I think 2026 will be it may be it's as fast as this, where it's just 2025, early 2026. That's lightning fast, and it's over, and now we're in the rebuild. Because World War
Yeah.
II, it was only when Uranus was in Gemini for those first decade, and then the rebuilds all start with Uranus still in Gemini, actually.
Well, the other
Um,
part of it too is same thing with the Civil War. The Civil War started so it was the day that Mars conjoined Uranus in the first decade of Gemini, and it was like I think 3 days before Neptune ingress into Aries.
yeah, it was a day before, I think. Fort Sumter
Yeah.
the next day and ingress. So this is what I mean. My main message, just to come back, I like to do this sometimes because not everybody is like we know what we're talking about with each other. We're kind of in like those computer codes
But
talking
that's
to
what
each
people
other.
want. People want to be like around people that like do this kind of
Yeah,
stuff rather than be like,
yeah.
fucking just being boring all
I
the
know,
time.
but just I think there's some people that might just look if you're out there and you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? Just say this, okay? Be prepared. I think it starts 2024, and we're going to increasingly get into some really chaotic stuff that you may have never seen in your life. None of
Nope.
us may have ever seen. And I think the early candidate for it being over is maybe summer 2026, or even like towards the end of this
Ooh.
decade, maybe 2027,
I,
2028.
I
But
I was saying
either
I'm thinking
way, yeah,
2027 is when it's probably done, like at least throughout
yeah,
this next presidential cycle. But
yeah,
I think summer 2026 is the hottest time. I think that's
yeah,
the big part of it. And then of course it'll kind of linger. But
yeah.
I look at this
Well,
as go ahead.
why summer 2026 for you?
Because
Verse.
The Mars Uranus
Okay,
conjunction.
let's see that. Let's look at that.
Look
So
at
that's
that.
the
That's the
okay.
Mars Uranus conjunction right there.
That's in July.
And that's
Okay.
right when Jupiter ingresses into Leo.
Into Leo.
That's right when the
That,
nodes move, and the
dude,
North Node's
you
about to
know,
go into Aquarius.
this is the chart I've been. See, there it is. You can see that I call it the basket, and you can see it. You have it
The
right
bar,
there in your
yeah, the
chart, the
Barbo
Barbo
basket.
basket.
I've just
And so,
my problem
dude,
with the
July
Barbo basket is
2026, if that's on your radar, July 2026, it's been on my radar. I think just synchronistically, there's something about July 2026. Then go ahead, though. I'm just like that.
My thing
You're on
is
it.
like I
I'm like,
think it was World War II was also a Jupiter Saturn trine. I don't necessarily look at trines and sextiles as bad. I mean, as good. I look at this as also too because again, what a week later we have the nodes going towards Aquarius and the North Node Pluto conjunction in Aquarius is going to be like you will eat the bugs, you will
dude,
eat live in the pot. It's very extreme,
fuck.
but I think this is Civil War divorce time while we're also going through a war. And again, for people that are freaked out about it, it's like here's the reality: like it's not German soldiers are going to knock on your door and take your family. It's going to be. I mean, again, my thing is, I think it's going to be the Venezuelans and UN buckets, UN helmets going door to door. I think that's a lot easier to do, and then you're going to see this national drift in this country. How that all comes back together at some point, I don't even know. But I don't think it's going to be what people think that it is. And again, with World War, the economy's still going to go on. Things are going to go on. I think the only thing, this is something I wanted to mention before, was I've been investing in physical products. Like I don't have money for like stock markets, but like I've bought new computers and new tech because the second China goes to war with Taiwan, everything that you own, 80% of what you own is built in China, gone. It
Yeah.
is gone. You will not see anything new for 10 years. And that's why I think they
Mhm.
need to do it because, again, then that will incentivize more. Because, I mean, besides Mexico production, that will be really important unless we go to war with the cartels. But that's kind of gets foggy when you look into it. But that's still a
Yeah.
maybe.
We are the cartels, and you get that gets that foggy. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it's more so it's more
Yeah,
so
yeah.
of I mean, we allow it, and I really believe that we will go to the war with the
There's
cartels to simply.
partnerships. Yeah,
Well,
is all I'm saying.
we're
Yeah,
going to go to
yeah,
war with the cartels so they can implement the same security state that Israel's under. Like that's
yeah.
the whole point. So they can say, okay,
Okay.
hey, we don't know who your neighbors are. Let's implement these security cameras. Now you're going to be allowed to like again, same thing with COVID. They locked you down, big scary virus to normalize the solution, which that they wanted to sell you and that they had planned all along. But I'm looking
We're
at
all in
this as like,
Gaza.
yes, we're all
Gaza becomes the whole world. And people were talking about this 15 years ago, like, and I was always like, it felt somehow true to me that because a lot of the new tech is practiced in Gaza, they deployed like new weapons and new control structures and new security structures. That's a whole rabbit hole. Whitney Webb again has gone
Well, and
into
that's
all
why
of
it's so
that, naming
bullshit
and
where they're
names.
like, oh yeah, some fucking again, like some dudes in Hamas flew hang gliders over this border that's got lasers that like just could shoot anything. Yeah, fucking right.
That was my
Okay.
initial thought. I was like, I don't, this is bullshit. I mean, that was my first
That's like
thought
saying a
was,
17-year-old went and
yeah,
spray painted and tagged like inside of Area 51. Like, okay, oh
yeah,
fucking
yeah,
K.
exactly right. Yep.
Um, but yeah, I'm really looking at this 2026 time as like this is the full unlocking of the future. Like we are
Yeah,
now in it. We are now
yeah.
ready for it. I think there's good and bad parts to it because again, there might be world war. I mean, just like again, Ukraine. There's people in Ukraine that are getting bombed, but they're still on YouTube. They're still on Discord. They're still
Dude, they're
doing
hanging
things.
out at the club on the weekends,
Oh
in
yeah, I've
Kiev.
seen,
I mean,
or like even
just,
Odessa. Like there's
yeah,
fucking
yeah, yeah,
fucking parties there, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's one of those things where both of these things will exist at the same time,
yeah.
and so
That's what I think.
but yeah, my biggest thing, and this is what I just still don't know, is where does this money transfer come from? It's like it's here, it's here in this next timeline, but what is the day?
The day, see, that's why I'm less the day stuff because it's you. I just it doesn't as interest me as much as just knowing we're in the time for it, and then when it merges, I'm like, yep, there it is. But I think
It's
I
not maybe
think
not necessarily the day, but more so of like what is the event? Is it the Jupiter Uranus conjunction? Is it the first ingress? Is it the second ingress? Like which is it?
I think it'll be after Uranus re-enters Gemini for the final time. So that's what I think. Just based on those cycles in the past, I think Uranus, once it clears and is fully in, that's when it'll happen. And I think if you look at the World Bank stuff and Bretton Woods, I believe was in 45, and so Pearl Harbor happens at the end of 41. So you're looking at 42, 43, 44. That was 3.5 years before you had the new money system. Um, so if we just use that as a proxy, I mean, it would be 2025 plus 3.5. you're talking 2026, 2027, 20, it could be after that basket of Barbeau and into the 2027, 2028 pocket. If, you know, but they had the legislation, a lot of people probably know this, but during those COVID bailout bills, the early drafts had the Fed coin. It was right in there where you're going to
Mm-hmm.
get from the Federal Reserve into your digital wallet these bailouts. And so they have it ready to go with the legislation. You just need the right crisis, right? Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Well, and that's
And
why
so,
I kind of go back and forth of like, okay, will they do it during the war or is it right after the war? And during the war is kind of when they use the last of like the cash to kind of just get
oh,
like a buy one get one sort of a thing.
no, I think it's the Ukraine stuff. It's okay. This is a great a topic to trip into talking about Ukraine because they used USDT, which is a stable coin. The aid that American taxpayers are paying, the pensions and all of what they're paying to Ukrainians, it goes through special apps that were created by these. I mean, let me type it
Mm-hmm.
up so we can get the nouns
No,
and
I
people so
and
people can research it. But
yeah, I've heard of
it
that.
was stable coins. So like Ukraine stable coin use, and it's a Bill Gates funded app, I think. Give me go back to that villain, but stable coin use app. Let me just see this here. See if that will come up here. UAH, the first, no, central banks depends a lot. Stable coins come of age in the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, CEI.org. And this was in 2022. And let me see here if I can find yeah. So in Ukraine, the stablecoin Tether has become so valuable it trades for a premium as much as $1.10 for an asset designed to always peg at $1. But it was the app that they developed, which is key. And let me see if I can get another. That's the key thing here. Crypto platform simple dot app pilot new solution for sending money. That might be it. Simple dot app. But I'm going to come off it. I wish you could have found it fast for people, but just know there's whole advancemto happening in Ukraine around how to deliver stablecoins to people that need that aid. Because they don't want to have food to eat without it, and that is it's an example of if you have a crisis in America. So let's go to that 2025 fall. That's where I'm most interested in as the big event happening. Because we looked at those charts earlier, anaretic degree of Uranus, anaretic degree of Neptune, overlapping eclipse timing periods for the visible eclipses in America, Mars, Saturn, and the eighth house for this eclipse we're about to have, eighth house of money, and the DC eclipse chart, Mars on the midheaven, and the October solar eclipse chart that ran through Texas. So that's like war and then economic fallout around war, just a short delineation. So what if the event happens then? And then during some kind of pilot bailout legislation, that's when there's an app or some kind of thing that emerges
I
that
love
we're
that.
like on a
We're
Ukraine
we're
stable coin.
we're in a war. Download this app real
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah. I think they'll incorporate it with like Instagram or Facebook. I
Oh,
mean,
it's all gonna be.
you
I mean,
know,
that's a big reason why they want to ban TikTok. Like everyone's like,
yeah,
oh, it's Chinese spyware. It's like that doesn't fuck. Everything's Chinese spyware. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. Like our little like the electrical grid is literal Chinese spyware. Like they could turn off the electrical grid without even an EMP. Um, all that's for is for cohesion of the tech that we use, so that it's
yeah,
all there's no like weird rifts
yeah.
with it.
It's
Um,
Pepsi and Coke, like Zuckerberg versus Musk. You'll either be in the Meta or the X. Musk is already talking about making X a payments app, so all that digital stuff will run through there. And I think it'll be basically that's how we're going to run our world. Just like in China, by the way. You go
oh
to China,
yeah,
it's WeChat, and it's I forgot the other one, but everybody has a
everyone's
WeChat.
on
That's how you
WeChat.
communicate to everybody. That's how you pay everything. That's where you get your government.
Um,
Banks are all run through it. So basically, the WeChatification of America comes, and I think
I like
I think
that.
the events of 2025 are going to trigger the acceleration where there's no turning back because there is the impetus and the justification to bring it fully in. That's one scenario here. And whether it's 2026, 2027, 2028, when we're finally like, yeah, here, now we're in this new world and we're settled. I think the events probably happened in 2025 fall. That's just my sense. And I could be wrong. We're wrong sometimes, astrologers. People
Oh
need to
yeah.
realize that. Like, this isn't
Yeah.
gospel. I'm just looking at cycles, chatting with you, throwing out potentialities. So don't come back and like, they were
No,
wrong or something,
I
Yeah.
get shit wrong
Yeah.
all the time, but we get shit right all the time too.
Yeah.
That's the difference. We're gonna shoot some threes and we might make some, we might miss them, but hey, we gotta count the ones we make. Well, SJ, it's been another amazing conversation with you. I know we're in if you ever want to talk with SJ, just know it's the most ridiculous time scheduling situation ever. It's either late or early, and there's really no in between. I'm getting very sleepy and I still have to go to the gym, otherwise I will be yelled at. And I really appreciate you being on and talking about this. Which is there anything last words that you want to say, or
Yeah.
of course, plug yourself?
I do. I do want to tell people, look, reality is Maya. Okay. Basically, God is real. That's what I want to tell people. This is my personal opinion about what it means to be a human being and what it means to be alive. You have God inside of you. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. Touch base with your spiritual, heart-centered, loving self during this whole period. That's the most important thing. Love is the engine of survival, Leonard Cohen said, and others. I mean, this is a spiritual truth of the esoteric wisdom and teaching across the world of all traditions. So just like foster love in your own heart and to the people around you. That is the silver bullet through all of this chaos. Nothing else really matters, actually. Now, there's the logical planning and stuff. Yeah, you'll do all that too, but make sure you're spiritual, okay? And that's my main message. Okay, so let me come off of that and just say, come to our YouTube channel, doing a lot over there, SJ Anderson 144. Just type it in, SJ Anderson, and that'll come right up. I make more shorter videos, and I'm just lately, so I'll be talking about some of this stuff. I have a Civil War video that I will be making called I Don't Need Your Civil War, that Guns N' Roses song, Civil War. Did you ever hear that? We Don't Need Your Civil War, something about that.
That's
I
funny.
love that track. That's going to be the title of the video, but about some of this stuff. And I appreciate you having me, Cam. Look, an honor to be with you, and keep up the good work out there. And yeah, everybody, love. It's glib, it's short, it's succinct, but that's my main message. So
Well, anyway, thank you so much for being on, SJ, and we'll catch you later. Thanks for watching, everybody.